Welcome to Shahnameh, the Book of Kings. Today we continue with our story of Zal and Rudabeh. When Sam awoke, he summoned priests and wise men and consulted them. He began by questioning astrologers and asked them what the outcome of a union between two who were as different as fire and water should be. Surely it would produce a disaster, like the war between Zahak and Faradin. He told them to consult the stars and to see if any good can come from this. For many days the astrologers searched the skies, and when they came before him, they were all smiling and said, "Fortune will join these two enemies as one." The chief astrologer said, "I bring you good news of the union between Zal and Mehrab's daughter. They will both prosper, and from these two will be born a great hero, a mammoth-bodied man who will conquer the world with his sword, who will lift the king's throne beyond the clouds. He will encourage the race, get rid of the race of evil from the earth, and cleanse the world with his heavy mace. He will be a comfort to those who suffer, and he will close the gate of war and the pathways to evil. Persia will trust in him and in his fame. Her champions will rejoice to hear his name. Throughout his life the monarchy will thrive. In times to come his glory will survive. Before his name inscribed on every seal, Persia and Rum and India will kneel." Relieved by the astrologer's words, Sam laughed and thanked them warmly, and gave them great quantities of gold and silver because they had brought him comfort when he was afraid. He called for Zal's envoy and said to him, "Speak kindly to Zal. Tell him that this is a strange wish that he has, but that since I gave my word, it would be unjust for me to look for some way to refuse him. At dawn I shall leave for Persia." Then he gave the messenger some silver coins and said, "Don't delay on your journey for an instant." When 2 watches of the night had passed, horsemen's cries, the din of drums, the blare of trumpets announced Sam's departure with his army for Persia. The envoy reached Zal with news of his good fortune, and Zal gave thanks to God for his happiness, distributing gold and silver coins to the poor, and being equally generous with his friends. A sweet-voiced serving woman acted as a go-between for Zal and Rudabeh, taking messages from one to the other. Zal summoned her and told her what he had learned, and he said, "Go to Rudabeh and tell her, pure-hearted moon of loveliness, when matters go from bad to worse, we soon see a key to open a way to escape. My envoy has returned from Sam with good news. Sam argued and blustered for a while, but finally he has agreed to our marriage." Then he gave the girl Sam's letter, and she hurried like the wind to Rudabeh to tell her of the good news. Rudabeh showered her with gold coins and sat her down on a gold-worked throne. He gave her muslin headscarf that was so finely woven the weft could not be told from the warp. It was embroidered in red and gold, and the gold was almost hidden by jewels. She also gave her 2 valuable rings, which glittered like the planet Jupiter. Then she sent her back with her many greetings and good wishes to Zal. As the woman emerged from Rudabeh's apartments into the main hall of the place, Sindak caught sight of her. The woman blushed in fear, turning the color of red juniper berries, and kissed the ground before her queen. Sindak became suspicious and said in a loud voice, "Where are you coming from? Tell me. You're always going back and forth from Rudabeh's apartments, and you avoid my eye when you do so. My heart suspects you of something. What are you up to? Are you the bowstring in this affair of the bow?" The woman replied, "I'm just a poor woman trying to earn my daily bread as best I can. Rudabeh wanted to buy some jewelry, and I brought her a golden diadem and a splendid ring set with precious stones." Sindak said, "Show them to me and put my heart at rest." She replied, "I left them both with Rudabeh. She wanted some other things, so I'm going to fetch them." Sindak said, "Show me the money you paid for them, and pour cold water on my anger." But the woman replied, "Rudabeh said she would pay me tomorrow. You can't ask to see something I haven't received yet." Sindak knew the woman was lying, and she hardened her heart against her. She began to search her roughly, looking in her bosom and sleeves, and when she found the fine headscarf embroidered by Rudabeh, she was enraged, and ordered her daughter to come before her. She clawed at her cheeks and wept, and said, "You are a noble woman, and as beautiful as the moon. What whim has made you choose to act like someone from the lowest depths rather than someone who occupies a throne? What do you lack? Why are you behaving like a criminal? Now tell your mother whatever secrets you are hiding, especially why this woman keeps coming to you. What is going on? Who is the man this scarf and rings were intended for? The Arab's wealth and crown have brought us both good and ill fortune, and you want to fling our standing and reputation to the winds like this? What mother ever gave birth to a daughter like you?" Rudabeh was ashamed and stared at the ground. She began to weep, and tears coursed down her lovely cheeks. She said to her mother, "I wish I'd never been born, and then you would see nothing evil in me, nothing good. You're wise, but love has made my heart its prey. I think of Zabol's king night and day. I burn for him in love's tormenting fire. My heart's consumed by passion and desire. I weep my life away without him. I have no desire to live. I long to die. He came to me, and hand in hand we swore our mutual love will last forevermore. His envoy went to Sam, who angrily declared at first that we would not agree to Zal's request, but bit by bit relented, argued and stormed, and finally consented. The letter that he sent to Zal was brought to me here by the woman whom you caught." Sindak was astonished at her words, and at first said nothing, but then thought that she liked the idea of Zal as a son-in-law. However, she said, "This isn't wise. There's no noble warrior who can compare with Zal. He's a great man and the son of a hero, who has a fine reputation and is an intelligent, clear-sighted man. Zal has many virtues and only one fault, but that fault diminishes his splendor. The king of Persia will be angered by this, and he'll raise the dust of battle over Kabul. He has no desire for someone from our family to rule." Sindak released the go-between and spoke kindly to her, saying she now knew what had been hidden from her. She saw that her daughter had lived cut off from the world and without anyone's advice. Then she lay down alone, filled with such anxiety that her skin felt bruised and broken. Mehrab came from the court in good spirits because Zal had been very attentive to him. He saw Sindak lying down frowning and seemed troubled, and he said to her, "What's the matter? Why is your flower-like face filled with frowns?" She said, "I've been thinking for a long time about our palace and wealth, our Arab horses, our page boys, and we have sworn loyalty to you. Our gardens and royal enclosures, the beauty of our daughter, our reputation, knowledge, and prudence. Little by little, the freshness and force of our lives leaves us. Misfortune will come. Our enemies will inherit what is ours. Our troubles will have been as vain in the wind. A narrow coffin will be our lot, and the fruit of the tree we have planted will be poison. We have watered it and labored over it, hung crowns and treasures in its branches. It has grown upwards to the sun and spread its shade, and now it is to be felled. This will be our end, and who knows where our peace is to be found?" Mehrab said to Sindak, "You speak as if this were a new thing, but the fleeting world was ever thus, and wise men have always feared its ways. It raises one and casts down another, and heaven will cannot be opposed. There's no point in agonizing over this, and it won't change. We cannot fight against God's decree." Sindak said, "A priest will tell his child this parable of the tree to explain the ways of the world to him. I said it is so that you would pay attention to what I have to say." She hung her head, and her rosy cheeks were wet with tears. "The heavens do not always turn as we would wish. Know then that Zal, Sam's son, has set who knows what snares in secret to catch Rudabeh. He has captured her pure heart, and we must consider what to do about this. I have talked to her at length, but to no avail. Her face is sallow with grief, and I can see that her heart is in turmoil." When Mehrab heard this, he sprang up and grasped his sword hilt. His body trembled, his face darkened, blood surged in his heart, his lips were cold with sighs, and he said, "I shall make a river of blood of Rudabeh this moment. Sindak stood and, grasping him by the waist, said, I am your slave. Listen to me first, then do whatever you wish, and may wisdom guide your soul. But he twisted from her grasp and pushed her away, roaring like a maddened elephant. He shouted, I should have cut that girl's head off when she was born. I didn't. I didn't do as my grandfather would have done, and now she comes up with this sorcery to destroy me. I could be killed for this, and my reputation destroyed. Why do you want me to stop from punishing her? If Sam and Manuchehr march against us, smoke from the sack of Kabul will cloud the sun, and neither the town nor our fields or crops will survive. Rudabeh said, Calm yourself. Don't talk so wildly. Sam already knows, and there's no need to be fearful and anxious. He's traveling from the land of Gorgason to Manuchehr's court. The matter is not a secret anymore. It's out in the open. Mehrab said, Don't tell me such lies, woman. The wind does not obey the dust. If you could show me some way to manage this, then I wouldn't be so worried. Who is there from Alvaz or Kandahar who wouldn't like to be allied to Sam? Sindak answered, My lord, may I never need lies to help me. What harms you obviously harms me, and am I devoted to your heart's well-being? I told you the truth. This is the matter that's been troubling me. But if this marriage should happen, it wouldn't be so amazing after all, and the prospects should not worry us so much. Feridun became king of Persia with the help of Sarv, king of Yemen, and Zal is trying to do something similar. The world will not shine with splendor from earth, air, and water alone. Fire must be there too. The elements have to mix. When a stranger joins your family, those who wish you ill are discomforted because it makes you stronger. As Mehrab listened to Sindak, his heart was filled with fury, his head with confusion. He said, Bring Rudabeh to me. But Sindak was afraid that he would harm her in his anger, and she answered, First, you must swear to deliver her back to me safe and sound. Kabul must not be deprived of her. She is a paradise, a rose garden in her loveliness. She made him promise to renounce all thoughts of violence against their daughter, and Mehrab solemnly swore that he would not hurt her, but added, The king will be furious with this. There won't be any country or mother or father or Rudabeh left when he has finished with us. Sindak bowed before him and went smiling to her daughter, her face shining like the sun beneath the night of her dark hair. She said, Good news. The leopard has sheathed his claws and let the wild ass go free. Now put on some fine clothes and go to your father, and see that you cry in front of him. Rudabeh replied, What use are fine clothes? What are such worthless things when I lack the one precious thing I want? My soul longs for Sam's son. Why should I hide what's obvious? But when she went before her father, as lovely as the sun rising in the east, she seemed drowned in rubies and gold. She was arrayed like a paradise and as splendid as the sun in springtime. Her father stared at her in wonder and silently invoked God's blessings. Then he stormed at her. You senseless child! When was such behavior ever right for a nobleman? How can a fairy be like you marry the Ahriman? She lowered her black eyelashes over her dark eyes and did not dare to draw a breath. Her angry father raged at her like a roaring leopard, his heart filled with fury. She returned to her apartments, heartbroken, and her face was as sallow as saffron. Both the daughter and the king prayed to God to aid them. When Manuchehr learned that this diverse pair, Zal and Rudabeh, intended to marry, he said to his priests and sages, This will bring an evil day to us. By war and policy, I have delivered Persia from the clutches of lions and leopards, and Zal's impetuous love must not be allowed to raise up this defeated race so that they are our equals. By the union of Mehrab's daughter and Sam's son, a sharp sword will be unsheathed. One side will not be of our people. This will be like mingling poison and its antidote together. If their offspring follows in their mother's footsteps, his head will be filled with malevolence towards us. Persia will seethe with sedition and trouble, and as he hopes to gain her crown and wealth, all the priests approved his speech and said, "You are wiser than we are, and more able to do what is necessary. Do what wisdom demands." He summoned Nosar and his nobles to him and said, "Go to Sam, and ask him how the war has gone. Then tell him to come before he returns home." Nosar and his entourage set off with their elephants and war drums. When they arrived at Sam's camp, he was pleased to see them, and Nosar handed over his father's message reply, "I shall do as he commands, and my soul will find peace in seeing him." They set out tables for a feast, and the name of Manuchehr was the first they remembered when they drank. They passed the long night in pleasure until the bright sun reappeared. Then, to the din of drums, their mounts seemed to take wing as they sped toward the court of Manuchehr had commanded. When Manuchehr heard of their approach, a great cry went from Sam and Arnol, and the army set off, filling the valleys with their heavy lances and their shields woven in red gold, their drums, trumpets, and cymbals, their Arab horses, elephants, and treasures. In this manner, with its banners and drums, the army went to welcome Sam. Sam dismounted as he drew near the court, and a way was cleared for him to approach the king. Sam kissed the ground and went forward. Manuchehr rose from his ivory throne, a crown set with shining rubies on his head, and motioned Sam to the throne near him. He treated him with appropriate kindness, asking him sympathetically about the war with the Gorgazon and the demons of Manzandaran, and Sam answered all his questions one by one, recounting the stories of his battles, the rout of their enemies, and the killing of Zahok's descendant, Kakui. And Manuchehr listened. His crown seemed to reach the moon with pleasure. He gave orders for wine and a banquet to celebrate the extirpation of his enemies from the world. They passed the night feasting, and Sam's name was continually on the courtiers' lips. When day broke, Sam returned to Manuchehr's side. The king said to him, "Choose some chieftains and go from here to India. Spread fire and sword there, burn Mehrab's castle, and Kabul to the ground. Don't let him escape. He's dragon spawn, always raising his war cry against someone, filling the peaceful world with war and trouble. Sever the head of his allies. Cleanse the earth of Zahok's tribe." Sam replied, "I shall do this, and satisfy the king's anger." He kissed the throne and touched his face to the king's seal ring. Then he and his army set off their galloping horses for home. And this is where I end my tale for today. But I'll be back tomorrow with more, much more. Till then,